As dads, some days we feel like we have all the answers, and some days we feel like we don't have a clue. If that describes you, you're at the right place. This is the All Pro Dad Podcast. Welcome to the All Pro Dad Podcast, where each episode we dive into just one question. We talk about what we've gotten right and what we've gotten wrong. We explore what the experts say and leave you with just one small but powerful pro move. I'm Ted Lowe, and I'm joined today by Reggie Lewis and Buck Buchanan and BJ Foster. And between the four of us, we've got kids in all ages and stages. Buck, we ask a question each episode. What's our question of the day?
Well, the question for this episode is, what are some bad habits dads need to stop? Now, according to an accredited source called the internet, there are a few habits that most dads have that the other people in our lives just don't get. So we're going to go over these. Okay. So, guys, I want you to say yes or no to these common dad habits.
Dad habits.
Or should we call them dabbits?
That's how words get started.
That's true.
Right.
So say yes or no to these dabbits.
Okay.
That most which are neither good nor bad, at least not to dads.
All right.
Okay. So here we go. Number one, refusing to get rid of a shirt they've had for decades.
Guilty.
Yep. My wife won't allow it. She takes them to Goodwill.
Listen, starting this podcast, I've realized people are going to find out I only have like 7 shirts.
7? That's a lot.
Yeah, but they're clean.
Clean. Yeah. Perfect.
Never remembering your kids' friends' names, though you have known them since they were little.
No.
Not guilty.
Not guilty.
No.
A little guilty.
I believe like Ron Swanson is famous for saying, I mispronounced their name just to know that I'm better than them.
You do that to your kids' friends?
I do that to my kids. I'm just kidding. I do not. The next habit that's bad for dads is to have no friends, because your dad has no friends.
And you know, your wife's friend's husband are not your friends.
This is true.
Very true.
Dads have no friends. Would we say guilty or not guilty, BJ?
There have been times that it's been a little bit of a desert.
I have friends.
You have friends?
I can't live without people.
Yeah.
Wayne.
Yeah. I've got friends. What about Reggie?
Reggie, what do you think?
Not guilty. Not guilty. I got
Reggie got a crew. All right, number 4, reaching your hand in the back seat to take some of your kids' snacks.
Oh, guilty.
100%.
I would not say guilty. I would say subscribed, because we call that in my house a dad tax.
Yyep. The good old dad tax.
Yeah.
My son came down one time and he's like, "Where's my Easter chocolate bunny?" And I said,
he's like, "Well, here's the bottom half."
I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. He was like 4. And I said, "I ate it." And he said, "Dad, I didn't want you to do that." How bad of a parent is that?
Oh, yeah. Kids, they know if candy's missing.
Oh, yeah.
There's only one place to look.
Next one, play random videos on full volume.
Yeah.
Not
I
guilty.
do that because
Guilty.
I feel like my taste is impeccable. So,
well, you just showed us one right before we started this episode of Skeletor. What about you guys, BJ?
Yeah. I do that. Sure. I call the kids in. I'm like, "Come here, look at this."
Hey guys, watch it. I will say I'm proud to say that my boys are young enough that they want to see the videos that are on my phone.
Yeah.
That I'm showing them. You know.
First, what about Reggie?
Yeah, not guilty. I cringe when other dads do it. I'm like, don't do the dad thing. Come on. We're cooler than that.
You're cooler. You're better than that. Come on.
Take those New Balance shoes off.
I'm not better than that at all. In fact, I turn to Reggie and I'm like, "No, I'm not."
No,
and you know that.
Next one, having the best relationship with the family dog, even if they didn't want the dog in the first place.
I'm close.
Not guilty.
Well, my wife has a great relationship with her dog too. So, but I'm pretty close to that guy.
My wife is very allergic to dogs, and so is my oldest son. So
that's a sad story.
It really is sad. I wish we could have a dog.
Yeah, they came in with a little Shih Tzu one time, and I was like,
"Watch your mouth."
Did I? Watch your mouth. They came in with a little white dog, and I'm like, "Oh, are you kidding me?" No, he's my very best friend.
Yeah.
He sits in my office all day.
We had
so
one growing
elderly.
up. We had one growing up called Sadie. She was the best.
Oh, that's cool.
I know. But in my family, we even tried the hypoallergenic stuff, but our friends have a hypoallergenic dog, and my son walks away like,
Oh, that's
Get a turtle. I've heard that they're nice and cuddly.
oh, great.
Yeah.
And last one, last dabbit of the list, sneezing loud. Is there any other way to sneeze?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
Reggie, are you a loud sneezer?
Yeah, I want the whole house to hear. That's how I live it.
I
Like,
need
did
that
you guys
empathy
hear
from
that?
everybody.
Where's my bless you?
Someone said like you're never closer to death than when you sneeze, and so if you hold that in, it's like for a split second.
That's true, but
No, it's like for a split second, your entire body shuts down to expel this thing out.
The guy that was like shot was like, I don't know, I'm pretty close. I think I'm closer than when I was sneezing.
That video might have gone into like an alien conspiracy as well. So I don't know.
but I love that.
Buck, every time my infants, when we had the infants, the stage, when they would sneeze, I would always say, we almost lost you there. Because I too subscribe to they're close to death. So
we almost lost you there.
I mean, if you think about it, your entire body stops doing what you tell it to do to sneeze.
No, when you tell them that when they're like 5 or 6, you're going to need major therapy for your kids at that point.
Yeah.
Hey, we almost lost you right there. Sorry. Okay, so
Never sneeze again.
So those are some bad habits that are a little bit more jovial. Buck, you
Yeah.
always bring the joy. Thank you very much.
I try to.
And new words, dabbits.
Dabbits.
But BJ, who is the most prolific writer of allprodad.com, he's given the shake of the head. He's been humble, but we know that he is. How many articles have you written totally from allprodad.com?
Somewhere
14 million.
somewhere over 400. Somewhere over
400. You've got this knack of kind of knowing where guys are and what they're interested in. And you wrote a post on this, about what are some bad habits that dads need to stop. And they clicked on that a lot. Like, what made you start this post? Like, what made you say, I need to write a post on this?
I mean, I think I was just starting to think about how the small little habits, the things that we do really impact not only us, but the people around us, the ones that we love the most. And so I think I had fallen into plenty of bad habits that I'm like, I need to get out of, and was kind of battling through that. And so the 5 that I kind of came up with, some of them I struggle with, some of them I don't, but as I was observing other dads and myself, I was like, oh man, these are things that I need to stop. These are things that other guys need to stop. So that's where it came from.
So let's do this. What's number 1?
So number 1 would be yelling. And this is something that I'm like really good at. This is just a bad habit. It's, it might be the thing that kind of stops bad behavior. Like it's probably the thing that's most effective because it instills fear.
Short-term, yep.
But ultimately it's just what you're displaying to your kids is that you can't really control your emotions. It causes disconnection because it makes them afraid of you. So,
But what if you're Italian?
Even if you're Italian, it doesn't matter.
I'm not Italian.
Yeah. I'm Irish, and I think we get pretty mad too. And so anyway, it's one of the things. Like we grew up. I grew up in a great family, but we were yellers. There was one particular time my wife and I were at my mom's, and my sister and my mom were yelling at each other like across the hallway, and we were staying in a room in the middle of that hallway. And my wife, who's an only child, was like, how can you sleep? And I'm like, they do that all the time. It's fine. Like we just kind of grew up sort of yelling at each other, and then we were fine. It wasn't like we held on to anything. But it is one of those habits that it's just it with kids in particular, it can make them get on eggshells. It can bring a lot of anxiety for them.
Well, and I want to double click just for a minute. Like when you say, hey, my wife did not come from that. No. So that probably wasn't great for your marriage either, huh?
Well, I don't yell. I don't think there's been, in our 17 years of marriage, I don't think I've ever yelled at my wife.
You got enough at home growing up. You're like, I don't need to do that here.
I know how she is, and I know if I raise my voice on her, she just like crumples.
Right.
And I never felt a need to kind of do it.
Right.
Like she's actually yelled at me, but I'm like, okay. How
is she when you yell at the kids though? That's what it kind of meant. Like How does she respond to that?
Sometimes, I mean, she just sort of like, there are times when it gets bad that she's just kind of like, okay, she'll look at me and be like, she won't contradict me in front of the kids, but she'll be like, she'll be behind them kind of going like silently like, okay, calm down and like, let's take a break.
I've seen that look like in the background, like,
don't,
like kids are, she's managing like the kids going, or she's looking at you.
No, she's looking at me.
Yeah.
She's looking at me.
Like,
but there are times that she's gone off too. I mean, you know, like, but she's a flight attendant, so she'd be gone for a couple days. And my big trigger is when the kids are in the back in the van and they get physical with each other because it's such a distraction. The second I stop at a red light, it's like bullhorn, you know, like, and they're crying and whatever. And in the moment, I'm like, good, you're crying, good. You deserve it. You know, but you know, they stop doing the thing.
Right,
and then that teaches me like, oh, that's where I need to go. But it's a bad habit.
Reggie, what about you, bud? Do you have to watch not being a yeller?
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in a household where my mom didn't yell, but my dad, oh my goodness, like that was his tone. That was like no matter what conversation, it always escalated to that. And so now I always have to watch myself because I'm repeating what I grew up in. And I realized to what BJ said, it's like you're not controlling your emotions in this moment, are you? Like you taking yourself out of the moment, and now like the moment controls you, and when that moment starts controlling you, you're just yelling. And so I have to watch that because my wife's not a yeller, my kids aren't yellers. So
when that moment controls you, Reggie, you do it every time when you phrase something. Was that's what's happening. The moment's controlling me at this. Buck, are you a yeller? I can't imagine that.
Well, what's funny is like my parents were not yellers, but I think I grew up just a very loud person. And so I think I tended more to share my thoughts loudly than even my parents did. But I mean, now I can, I could yell, and it does happen. And what I think is interesting is I don't like it when I see my kids do it, but I can't. You know, it's so that's where it's unfortunate, I think.
I'm not a yeller. I'll definitely get angry and respond out of anger, which I think is the same thing. But like I get the same thing from Nancy. I think Mark and Susan Merrill, you know, the founders of All Pro Dad, she says that she'll say, "Hey, Mark, do you need a glass of water?" That was one of the things that was kind of the cue. And so Nancy and I, you know, that's one thing we've added lately.
I think that would take me off a little more. I'd be like, no, I don't need water right now.
The next one is overreacting.
So
yelling 2.0.
No, well, it can be that, but it's that kind of you're grounded for a year. You know, it's just kind of that jumping into these where I'm going to immediately respond to this thing, and then you just end up losing credibility because you've overreacted, you've overblown it, or you just even something that's just kind of like, okay, they might have done something that's wrong, but it's not that big a deal, and you're acting like it's the biggest deal in the world.
Well, I haven't thought about that, but I guess that is true when if every time I've overreacted with the discipline side of it, and I've had to kind of dial that back again, that does kind of create some loss of credibility, I think, you know. You're grounded for a week, and then it's like, I might have overreacted. Let's just do it today.
Yeah. See, I think, but I think that gains credibility if you actually admit, you know, I overreacted. I'm sorry. I was talking to your mom or whatever, and 2 weeks was too much, and you're gonna get a punishment of it's gonna be 3 days. That's gonna be more.
But could you run into the problem though of the next time when I do respond, not overreacting, but it's true? Could they be like, okay, you don't mean that? I'm like, no, I do mean that, you know?
Well, they'll find out, and that'll give you credibility. I mean, that's but if the thing that's going to lose you credibility is if you know that it's wrong, that you know that you overreacted, but you double down and you're like, I'm not going to go back on it. Gotcha. No, you're going to deal with it 2 weeks, or you just sort of don't talk about it again, but you just sort of let it go and you don't enforce what you just said you were going to do.
I see.
You're going to lose credibility that way.
Yeah. We have a 2-year-old where I don't overreact with him at all. He can spill the juice. He can spill his food. And I'm like, oh, it's all right, buddy. But my 6-year-old son and the 7-year-old daughter, they do something. I'm like, what are you doing? And I have to realize like they need the same grace at 7 and 6 that I give to the 2-year-old, but they don't get it, right? Because I'm looking at them like, look, you're old enough to pour your own juice and not spill it. What is wrong with you? It's like, no, they're not. They're not. Like, they've been on this earth for 7 years. Like, they're not old enough to do much of anything still. So but to what BJ said is like the overreacting and then going back, I think through, right, like eventually our kids are going to find out who we are, right? Like they're going to be adults and they'll be like, oh, that's who my dad is, right? Like, and I hope that at that point in time, they realize like, yeah, I was one to correct my wrongs. If I overreacted, I did say sorry. I did come back and be like, look, that was too much. So, yeah, I think through those lens there.
That's a running theme on this podcast too, is just apologizing. You know what I'm saying? I'm sorry. What I've noticed with our youngest is I've overreacted with her the most. I think I'm out of parental gas a little bit. I'm a little tired, and so I'm a little more quick to the draw. But what I've learned with her is if my reaction is too big, that's all she sees, and she doesn't see her behavior at all. And so she goes and she says to the wall, what she really wants to say to me, which we let her do, and I always listen. And I can hear in there, and she's a complete martyr about the whole thing. And so I'm like, okay, this isn't working. I've got her upset because I got upset.
And I guess when you overreact, you are giving them something else to focus on. That's what I heard from that, was like, they're no longer thinking about what they did wrong. They're thinking, well, Dad blew up and he shouldn't have done that and blah, blah, blah. And it almost like gives credit to their wrongdoing. So that's...
And the thing she had done was a big deal. Like, it was a big deal, and it was like, oh wow, she saw none of that because I was an idiot.
Blew up.
Bad habit number 3, BJ, is what?
Disengaging. When I think about this one, I think about the guy who talked about, I can't remember his name, but he talked about men and women's brains and how men like to, they have their nothing box and they just kind of like
Mark
to,
Younger.
yeah, that's, there you go. That, and he said, you know, that's our favorite box. Is just to, is there anything better than just letting your brain just go and like and just not doing anything?
Right.
And so we just want to check out and we want to disengage, and it feels good. It feels good to relax and just let our brain do whatever. And we do need times for that. But if it becomes a consistent habit, I'll never forget. I had a friend, and I said, hey, are you close with your dad? And he said, I mean, it's fine. And I said, well, what do you like to do together? He's like, we don't really do anything. He just goes out to the garage and works on the cars at night and doesn't really. And that was his dad disengaging every night, just going, I'm just going to go into my place and I'm going to disengage from the family. So.
Sorry, I was disengaged. What? Just kidding.
Okay. Do you struggle with being disengaged, Buck? I think I just got our answer.
Well, I think it's funny that my wife doesn't understand that I can think about nothing. Like, I think women in general have a hard time with that.
The nothing box.
The nothing box, yeah. And so there are times where I want to disappear. I just want to go into thinking about nothing or just thinking about whatever. It doesn't matter. But the problem with that is when I disengage, I disengage on all levels. And so the problem that I find myself in is I can tend to disengage in times that I'm not supposed to. Like, I need to be there. I need to be present. Usually it's when my kids are awake. They're still young, so bedtime is a little early. And so those times when I get off of work, those few hours are important. And sometimes I can disengage in that time. And And that doesn't help any of our relationships, you know, with my kids or my wife, or she's like, I need help right now. What are you doing? And I'm like, I'm not doing anything.
Right.
Well, then why aren't you?
Wish I knew what you were thinking. I'm not. I'm not
Me
thinking.
too.
I'm not thinking anything. Reggie, what about you?
I too have struggled where I'm disengaged at the wrong time. Because I don't think disengaging is wrong, but there is a wrong place and time to disengage, such as like when my kids are doing something and they want that acknowledgement from me and I'm disengaged. And I had that, you know, all of 2 seconds to affirm them. But because I'm disengaged, I missed it. And we know that can damage a child. And I'm sure it has damaged my kids. So now, like, I realize to always be engaged, because when they're at football practice or my daughter's at gymnastics and she does something, she looks right over to me. And I'm sure I'm not the only dad that experiences that. She looks to me to be engaged, to be like, good job. That was great.
Did you see that, Dad?
Right. And it could be something silly. We know, right? Like our kids can do a little flip that we've seen them do 1,000 times. But I'd rather know I affirmed them 1,000 times than missed it once and it, you know, left an impact, you know. So
it's wrong to say, you need a new trick.
Right.
That's
not the way.
Can you do anything else, or is it just the one flip?
Yeah. That's okay. All right. Speaking of disengaging, I think these next two could be under that category. These are a little more difficult to talk about, but the next one's what?
Getting drunk. This is one that I have personal experience with because while I think my dad was a wonderful father and I was very close with him, he would get drunk. And at best, getting drunk, you won't be at your most engaged and your mind won't be the most right. So like you miss moments, you miss opportunities. That's at the very least. That's at the very least. At the very most, what you're creating for your kids is a very unstable environment, an environment that they're filled with anxiety because you're unpredictable. You don't know that they don't know what's going to happen with you, what you're going to do because you're not in your right mindset. And so getting drunk is it's a bad crutch to kind of deal with pain. It's a way to just kind of, I'm going to numb it. I'm going to just try to not deal with it. And just on that level, if you're not dealing with your pain, then ultimately you're not going to heal from your pain and ultimately you're going to cause pain. So there's just a lot of different things involved in that one.
I mean, I have a personal situation to that too, where while my wife and I were not married and our oldest, she was 2 years old, and I was out getting drunk with my friends. And I remember Maria, my wife, she was calling and she blew my phone up. I probably had like 15 calls and then I finally answered one and I'm drunk. And she's like, Grace is throwing up and I need to take her to the hospital. She was 2 years old. And I'm just in there, I'm like, what are you talking about? And she was like, you need to get here. This is terrible. This is our first child, you know, like, so granted, Grace was okay after that, but she was throwing up and she couldn't breathe. She was turning purple and I couldn't be there for her because I was drunk. And it was something that I was like, I can't repeat that again, because in the moment it was serious. What if my daughter died and I'm, you know, drunk and I'm like, oh, I missed this moment. And so, I'm with you on that, BJ.
Reggie, thank you for sharing that. And what we don't want to do right now is minimize this. This is not beating anyone up. This is like, get help, buddy. Like if you're listening right now and you're going, whoa, I thought this was going to be this fun podcast that it is every time, hopefully, or at least those guys are having fun. It's just to say, we're not minimizing that. Just, you know, if you were sitting here with us, we just get some help, buddy. Like there's, if no one's told that you're valuable and you're loved and redeemable, just get some help.
Yeah.
Just get some help. And I think that transitions, we would say the same thing about this next one.
Yeah. Pornography provides this great dopamine hit. And it's like, I can forget about everything. I can feel empowered by what I'm watching. But ultimately, it makes you kind of lose a little bit of your humanity because you're kind of using really lost and hurt people to kind of get some gratification off of it.
What's your suggestion with someone that's struggling with porn? Because it is rampant.
Yeah.
So many guys struggle with this. It's so available, right? And so what's your words of encouragement and advice to somebody that's listening going, man, that's the thing. I just can't figure out what to do next with it. I know it's bad. I know it's not healthy. What do I do?
Yeah, I think it's a struggle. You're going to need to find accountability. You're going to need to get real with it. Like, be honest about it. Like, a lot of times it's, we sort of justify it. Well, it's not that bad. It's not like I'm cheating on it's not like I'm going out and sleeping with a lot of folks. And, but you got to be real about the pain that it causes. A lot of people kind of think, well, I'm not hurting anybody. No, you are. You're hurting because it causes a disengagement. It causes your mind to be a little bit more soggy. It causes you to not to feel with the same type of empathy and all that. So you got to get real with it. You got to find guys that you can be honest with, that you can find accountability, that they're not going to judge you, but that you can be honest with them and say, hey, listen, I was even tempted. I was thinking about watching this morning, or I watched it last night. And those guys will be like, I get it. Let's not do it. What's going on? Why did you get tempted? Well, I'm stressed out. What are you stressed out about? Like, get somebody to talk to. Maybe even get counseling. And if it's really bad, there are plenty of there are even intensives just around the country where you can go away for a week and get some But this is going to be an ongoing. It's going to be an ongoing battle. I mean, this is something that I've had plenty of experience with, but you can. It's all going to come down to the simple habits, and you got to win early. The second you start to feel tempted, like I feel like I want to go watch it, that's when you need to call your buddy and be like, I'm dealing with this right now.
Get ahead of the game before the frontal lobe checks out, basically.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you have to stay on top of, like you said. Just honestly, for me, it's for life. Like I've got to stay on top of it for life, because I did struggle with it in high school. Yeah, I struggled with it for a few years, and even to this day, I'm well out of high school. But even to this day, I have to put up the parameters. So like my devices, my computer, I have the filters on, and all of this other stuff, and the accountability. Like, emails get sent if anything happens, But I have to do that because I cannot trust myself, because I'm very good at lying to myself. My heart, my feelings are very good at lying to my head, my brain, and telling me, no, it's okay. You can go do this. No, it's really not. Like it really will ruin marriages. It'll crumple kingdoms faster than anything else. Because
it goes from justification to the other side is, you're the worst human in the world. Yeah. Isn't it funny how it goes from just, what's the big deal, to you're the worst? Reggie, you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I would say what I'm getting from BJ and Buck is that there's so much healing in your humility and transparency, and getting someone who is accountable to you, or the accountability partner. And so, we get as men, we can do I got this. Like, we're the I got this man, right? I don't need any help. I got this. And there are some things where it's like, no, you don't got it. You have some humility. Go get the accountability partner. And what I do in my house, it's like our kids, right? Like, they can get hurt, and then they're scared to show us their wounds, because they're like, no, like I'm afraid that it's going to hurt if I show you. And in our house, what I tell my kids and what I've learned to do is I go to the Father, I go to God with these things. Instead of saying, I got this, I don't want you to look at this, I reveal it to him. And, again, there's the humility and the revealing of what's happening in our lives.
Yeah.
Wow. You
guys, we just went deep.
We
dads.
did. And that's the thing, because this is a big deal.
It is.
This is a big deal. I had a friend come to me recently and handed me his phone and said, put a code in here, a 4-digit code. He goes, because I'm in a really rough spot and I'm more tempted than ever, which that tends to be the case. BJ, you've already said that. He said, put a code in there, because it would not let him get into certain sites until put the code back in. And I thought, that's really good. You just got to put those parameters up. So I think the bottom line for today, and again, we don't want to minimize anything at all. All of these things cannot be handled by 30-minute podcast. We don't want to say that to you, and we care about you, and we want to acknowledge what this is and what this is not. And we're not counselors, and we don't claim to be, but we do care about you and say, more than anything, get accountability through humility and get help. There's professionals that are going to help you. You're not evil. You're not bad. You're struggling, and there's hope. Yes, the struggle is normal, but the hope is available. Absolutely. And so bottom line for today is breaking bad habits leads to raising stronger kids, right? Yeah. And so with that, Buck, what is our pro move of the day?
Our pro move of the day. So habits are in themselves things that we habitually do, right? Mm-hmm. And so like what you were saying.
Dabbits.
Like what you were saying, though, is like it's going to take time, but be consistent. Mm-hmm. And so, but for the pro move is choose one bad habit that you do and stop it for 1 week. Mm-hmm. And that's not going to cure it, okay? Right. But if you're consistent and you habitually don't do that, then you start to see some of that freedom. So
I love that. Well, thank you guys. Thanks for your transparency. BJ, thanks. This is amazing. This is why everybody loves BJ's posts, because he's just got a way of being real and being honest. So thank you, friend. I appreciate that. And we appreciate everybody that's listening today, because we know you could be listening to a million other things. And we thank you for listening. And we hope and we pray that this will be something you'll be glad you did, because we know your kids will be glad you did. Thanks for listening to the All Pro Dad podcast. All Pro Dad is the fatherhood program of the nonprofit Family First. Along with our motherhood program, iMom, we exist to help you love your family well. Subscribe to our daily email, the All Pro Dad Play of the Day, by going to allprodad.com/subscribe and get daily powerful and practical fatherhood tips in your inbox. The All Pro Dad podcast is hosted by me, Ted Lowe, produced by Bobby Lewis.